Chris has come to Western Belgium to see where James Moyles fought in the very early days of the First World War.
Well, I can tell you that you are actually walking in his footsteps on this road.
Really?
You would have walked up this road, past that mill, and gone into trenches either side of this road, perpendicular to this road. Just a little bit further up, the trenches went that way and that way. And in 1914, it resembled quite a lot what you see today. So they would have been digging trenches amongst the crops, which would still have been there.
Right.
So he actually would have walked up this road at night, and then his units would have gone into the trenches. The Germans were only about 300 yards away.
They knew they were there?
They did, yeah.
So
the battle was... They were in the middle of the battle already, in the middle of the first Battle of Ypres already. This is Sergeant John McIlwain.
Wow.
Quartermaster sergeant of the same battalion, so he would have known this man, because if he needed new underpants, your great-grandfather, he'd go to this bloke. 21st of October 1914.
Right.
He got up at 5:30 in the morning and moved up into support. And you can see here, got into action in the forenoon near St Julian in front of a great windmill standing by a highway. This is the great windmill. It was destroyed, but it's rebuilt on exactly the same spot.
Wow.
The trenches are at right angles to the road, which divides our section from that occupied by the Guards Brigade. So he was on that side of the road, on the left-hand side, trenches in this field, and the Guards Brigade were in trenches in that field there, yeah. And on the 22nd of October, it says, the morning began with very heavy shelling. What happened was that the very young German troops were attacking in massive force in this direction, trying to take that village of Langemark over there. And in fact, the battle which he took part in was called the Kindermorde, which is the massacre of the innocents.
Wave upon wave of young German conscripts were mown down by the well-trained sharpshooters of the British Expeditionary Force. The rifle fire of James Moyles and his colleagues was so rapid, the Germans thought they were facing machine guns. The windmill close by became known as the Mill of Death.
They knew they had to cut these men down. I'm afraid that's what they did. Tens of thousands were killed here. I mean, the diary talks about piles of German bodies in these fields just in front of us here. So this area here you're standing in 1914 was a killing field. Nothing glorious about it at all, really, was there?
No. And I play records and talk a lot.
For his first 4 days at the front, James Moyles fought, ate, and occasionally slept in these fields. This very spot was to become the most intensely fought over piece of ground in the history of warfare.
There you are. It's the kind of thing which you find in the fields. All over the place, that's a piece of British webbing. It's a buckle, a brass buckle of a piece of British belt. It could be 1914.
And you just found that in the field?
The fields are full of this stuff.
Wow. That belonged to a British soldier?
Mm-hmm. We'll never know who he was, but... or Australian, or South African, or New Zealand, or... Irish. Do you want to see where he went next?
Yeah.
OK.
Yeah, it looks
this way.
In my head, I can see him now as a young man. You know, I don't exist, my dad doesn't exist. His son exists, my granddad. My dad's dad was in Ballina in Mayo while his dad was on that field. It's mind-blowing. And I can't wait to go and see where we're going next. And what a bizarre emotion to have, because I know this is not ending up good, because I know he dies.
By the end of October, the Allies' situation was perilous. They were running out of reserves. James Moyles had already survived one German onslaught, but after just 4 days away from the front, he was about to face another. The Connaughts were ordered back into the line 4 miles southeast of their first bloody encounter. Their mission was to shore up the threadbare British defences that were being overrun by another wave of German attackers.
The front line ran through here, across these fields, and then in front of Passchendaele Church over there. Right, that was the British front line. They're in a terrible situation now. They're pulling men in, they're pulling cooks in, they're pulling bottle washers in. Anybody who can handle a rifle is being thrown into the line.
Obviously outnumbered.
In places 12 to 1, but generally 3 to 1. There's swarms of Germans coming across here, wave upon wave upon wave.
Is it nose to nose?
In places it's 50 metres between the German front line and the British front line, but it's all getting mingled up now because the Germans are pushing so hard all the time. They're getting in and being driven out at the point of the bayonet.
Right.
And more getting in, but the losses are mounting and mounting and mounting. And you look through the diaries, McIlwain's diary and Chambers' diary, and you can see that you can read it in their words every day. We're getting closer and closer and closer to disaster. We cannot possibly hold out. So we get to the 1st of November, and your great-grandfather's still here, and the trench just ran across this field here, just in front of us, underneath these box bushes. And sometime on the 2nd of November, he died in this field. This is the spot where he was on that day. And believe it or not, we actually have a couple of eyewitness accounts for that. Some of his comrades, 2 of his comrades, and I'll let you have a look at those.
Okay.
Here we are. This is from the Western People. I don't know if the newspaper's still going.
Yeah, it still is, yeah.
There we are. It's this one here, this piece here.
So this guy's talking about his experiences. He was there. I've seen heads and feet blown away, which is a horrendous thing. I saw Michael O'Hara of Ballina walking up and down the trench to keep himself warm when the head was taken clean off him by a shell. I was quite near poor Jimmy Moyles, which is James Moyles, another Ballina man. When he peeped over the trench and fell back quite dead, a bullet had cut clean through his forehead. He was one of the pleasantest men in the trench, and the father, I believe, of a big young family. Yeah, he was. So I knew he died, obviously, but reading that he got shot through the head is that's quite emotional. I think it's just because now that I know so much about the family and everything I've learned about them, this all kind of makes so much sense. If I'd have read this a year ago, the name Moyles would have been the only thing that really meant anything to me, but now I understand the whole thing. And he leaves a widow and 8 to mourn his loss. And one of the 8 was my granddad. Then he had a son, and then his son had me. And that's our story.